Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Populist Podcast. I'm Chase,
And I'm Charles.
and today we're joined by Natalie Cline, the Democratic nominee for West Virginia's 1st Congressional District. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm going to get the ball rolling. Do you want to start us out by telling us who you are, where you come from, and why you're running?
Sure. So, my name is Natalie Cline, and I am the Democratic nominee for U.S. House of Representatives in West Virginia's 1st District. And I'm running for our healthcare, our jobs, and our kids. The reason I'm running is I'm a West Virginia native. I grew up in this district. I've lived in quite a few different parts of this district. So is my husband. And we'd spent all of our lives here. We moved to DC for about 5 years for work. And when our son was 2 years old, we desperately wanted to move back and be closer to family and friends. And we really wanted for our son to experience growing up in West Virginia like we did in the 80s. If you're from West Virginia and you're listening, you kind of have a sense of, what I'm talking about. The pepperoni rolls, running around outside, running through the hills, flashlight tag with your friends in the neighborhood, riding your bike wherever you want to go. Those very kind of like Americana things of childhood that people have nostalgia for. And we were so lucky to get to experience that growing up here. And we really wanted to offer that to our son. And it felt like as soon as we got back, we got hit with this culture shock. And I just couldn't get past this sense of how can a place that made me who I am cause me to feel such culture shock? And it's not that the people are different or the culture is so much different. It's that our kids are not getting to experience the same things that they used to be able to experience. And our working class families are being presented with so many additional burdens than anybody should ever have to be presented with. And the vast majority of this does stem from the opioid epidemic. And I just could not help but think I cannot continue to look my son in the eye and look at his cohort of kids that some of them are not even getting to experience a childhood because they're worried about, if they're going to get evicted, perhaps again from their apartment. They're not getting to spend nearly as much time with their parents. So many of them are living in grand family type situations. And we're at that point in time now where we have actually coined that term, grand families. So the more we were here, the more I just thought, I want to fight for it. I want to fight for his future. I want to fight for our future. And I want to help to create a future in West Virginia where our children and our grandbabies have a choice to stay close to home.
All right, so I'm going to jump right into the questions. You're running in an overwhelmingly white district that has a plus 19 Republican rating, according to the Cook PVI. So,
Mhm.
how do you plan to overcome this massive hurdle to defeat David McKinley come November?
Well, there are quite a few things that we are doing as a campaign to reach out to people. And I think that the key thing in all of this is actually reaching out to people. David McKinley has not held an in person town hall in over 10 years. He hides behind virtual town halls where, if you've participated in these things, just like when we're participating in something like this, somebody probably already has the questions prepared. And maybe you might be lucky to know what those are ahead of time, maybe not. Um, you guys didn't share those with me, just for all the listeners, so you know. But a lot of times you can plan it and you can divert from other questions or say you don't have time to get to it. Whereas when you're doing an in person town hall, you don't have any idea what's coming at you. You don't know who's going to be there. You don't know what kind of questions you're going to get. And honestly, people deserve to be able to speak to their candidates face to face. So before COVID hit West Virginia, we were on the road hitting 2 to 3 counties every week holding in person town halls. There are 20 counties in this district. We almost made it to all of them. I can't remember what our final total number was, but we were hosting our own in person town halls that were sponsored by us. We were joining other candidates when they were having town halls or other events. If there were different committees in different counties that were hosting events, if we could get to it, we went to it. And I think that shows when you look at our primary numbers. We won the Democratic primary with 73% of the vote. Going into this general election, obviously halfway through the primary, we had to switch to a completely virtual platform overnight with COVID, but we did it and we did it successfully. we were off to the races a week later, hosting virtual town halls, participating in other people's virtual town halls. And we even put a link on our website where people can go and they can just pick a block of time that works for them, put their phone number in there, and then I personally call them. And there's no one else on the line. I don't have a campaign manager on the line. I don't have, a field director or an intern or anybody on the line. It's just you and me, and you get to tell me whatever it is that you want to tell me. And that has been wildly successful. People cannot believe that somebody will actually have a phone call with them. And most of these end up in the evenings after hours because that's when it's convenient for people. So those things have been very satisfying for us. And I think it's also resonating with voters. And I think that's what's missing in so many campaigns nowadays is this open communication. Everybody's so focused on crafting the best Facebook message or tweet or social media message that they can that tries to sway someone in a partisan manner or influence them. And yeah, we're doing it. We're on social media. We have people with the campaign who are helping us to be able to maximize that and get more followers and all the things that you're supposed to do. But when it comes right down to it, we're actually talking to people.
All right, so I'm going to jump into policy based questions. And as you touched on earlier, in 2018, West Virginia had the highest rate of drug overdose deaths, with 51 and a half people per 100,000 losing their lives. According to the CDC, 70% of drug deaths nationwide were due to opioids. As Congresswoman, how would you propose that we curtail these numbers?
There are two things that need to happen. The first one is the, you know, very policy related one where we need to have campaign finance reform. We need to make sure that politicians cannot be taking this corporate PAC money that is going to make them feel that they need to vote in favor of what is going to be best for a pharmaceutical company or the bottom line for the CEO of a pharmaceutical company in lieu of voting for what's best for their constituents and the people that actually live and work in their district. That's first and foremost. And people have been talking about that forever, and it never seems to get done. So we really need to be focused on who we are electing to office. So one of the movements that I'm a member of is called West Virginia Can't Wait. And I signed a pledge over a year ago when I joined West Virginia Can't Wait that says I will not take corporate cash money. I will not cross a picket line, amongst other things. But that's a big part of it, is that corporate cash money. I am not tied to any corporation, and I am not here to serve a corporation. I am here to serve the people of this district. So that is one of the first things that needs to be done. And the second thing is we actually need to help people. As you said before, we were hit the hardest with what happens when pharmaceutical companies can just push an unlimited supply of their product into an area. And we have too many people who have overdosed. We have too many people who are still suffering. We have countless families that have been impacted by this. I don't think there is anybody in this district who can say that either their family or their friend's family has not been affected by this crisis. Everyone here knows at least one person, if not two or three, who have either OD'd or are struggling with addiction. So if we're going to change here, we got to get the money out of it. And we need to actually help people. One of the policies that we want to propose, I have, this belief that we're not going to get to Washington on day one without multiple policies at hand. And the very first one that we started crafting over a year ago when we started this campaign is called the Family Reinvestment Act. And what that act will do is it will help get money back into the districts that have been affected by social and medical crises. So it'll act much like FEMA, except it's going to be for these types of epidemics and things like that happen. And instead of watching our facilities close, it will actually help reopen clinics, mental health facilities, help sponsor mental health programs. And one of the caveats of the Family Reinvestment Act is we have to do the same thing in our schools. We already have issues where our public schools are underfunded to begin with, and I have heard too many times from school nurses that they don't even get a chance to, be the school nurse that they need to be because they're spending too much time doing other tasks that they shouldn't be having to do, or that there are not enough school nurses in these schools. And if you talk to any of the teachers in this district, they will tell you that while they are packing lunches for these kids, even when were on strike to make sure that they have some nutrition, what they cannot do is they cannot take those children to a doctor. So we absolutely must make sure that we have enough funding to provide enough school nurses, but we need to institute mental health programs and have properly trained counselors in our schools and enough of them to help these kids so that when they graduate, they're okay. They feel confident in the next steps of their life. They feel like they can handle things, and it helps get them through any potential issues that they may have if they have family members who are suffering from addiction or if they have become victims of it themselves. And I might add that while we're advocating for instituting more medical facilities, mental health programs, this district alone in the last 6 months has seen 4 different medical facilities closed, all of which were owned by the same corporation. That corporation purchased them cheap, stripped them for profits, and then hid behind corporate loopholes. And the very last facility that closed, while they were scheduled to close, as soon as COVID hit West Virginia, they decided to go ahead and close early because, as we know, COVID patients are not profitable for profit hospitals. And there has been virtually no response from the incumbent, nor has he proposed any type of legislation that would prevent something like this from happening again. So that will be on our plate next is while we will go to Washington with a policy proposal in hand to actually help people here, the next policy proposal that we're going to start working on is a way to prevent this from recurring.
All right, so on your website, you have a policy labeled Healthcare for All. In the description of this policy, you state that you believe, quote, every single American should have access to quality and affordable healthcare, end quote. Can you elaborate on what legislation exactly you would support if elected to achieve universal coverage?
I would support Medicare for all or anything similar to Medicare for all. We have to get there. I am a huge proponent of Medicare for all. And while I believe us Democrats do a really good job of arguing about which policy is the best, in the end, we have to get there somehow. So we have to start building on what we have. If we can't pass Medicare for all, sorry, if we cannot pass Medicare for all, then we need to start doing things that get us there. Whether it's allowing, certain um, groups or age groups to be able to get into Medicare early or improving the ACI, we have to start doing something. And I will be willing to work with other representatives to make sure that we are continuously moving forward, if not passing Medicare for all.
Lately, millions of people around the world have gone to the streets to protest the killing of George Floyd and police violence in general. What specifically do you think should be done to end police brutality?
We need to train our police officers in other areas than what they're currently being trained in. There were a lot of fantastic ideas that have been presented as a result of this movement, as a result of George Floyd's death. And we need to start talking about those ideas. We need to start talking about diversity training, implementing it in more precincts than where it is right now. We need to start talking more about profiling. And not only do we need to be doing that within our police communities, but we need to make sure that we are not allowing our leaders at whatever level of leadership they're in to further instigate and divide our communities based on race. We all look up to our leaders in some way and we look to them for guidance. And as long as we keep hearing this type of rhetoric coming from so many different levels of our government, how can we expect everybody to act in, fair and ideal manners and treat each other with respect. Um, this has been a sordid history for this country. And in order to get past it, for everybody to be treated equally, for everybody to be treated fairly, and to stop seeing the color of one's skin, we have to have improved discourse. And that really starts with our leadership.
All right, so considering the massive reliance West Virginia has on the energy industry, most notably in coal mining, how would you balance the economic concerns of your potential constituents with the very real existential threat of climate change?
Our representatives have a responsibility to make sure that our districts have a varied economy so that our people do not feel that they are forced into either unemployment or have our largest employer be Walmart or the military. We need options. And the truth of the matter is, our energy companies are just not buying coal like they used to. It's expensive. West Virginia has explored so many other types of resource energy production, and it's time that we explore all types of energy production. And I feel like we need to be making sure that not only West Virginia, but other regions that have been heavily dependent on fossil fuel type jobs are able to have some type of incentive for energy production facilities that produce clean energy, um, and are responsible to our environment. So there's no reason we cannot start to improve our legislation for these communities to be able to have solar technology and solar technology production jobs here, or wind technology, not just in this district, but in other districts that have been heavily reliant on fossil fuels. I don't think you can just say that we need to go and put forth legislation that's only going to affect West Virginia. There are a lot of different regions that have historically been heavily reliant on fossil fuel production employment. And I think the same thing has happened in a lot of those regions where, as there are less and less coal mining jobs, they're not being replaced with anything else. And you cannot expect a coal miner who was making a very good wage to have the same kind of lifestyle or quality of life and support their family if they're forced to go and work at Walmart for minimum wage. And this is what keeps happening. And we keep seeing people who are forced into working multiple part time jobs just in order to make ends meet when they had a fantastic job before at the mining company. So we do have a responsibility. We need to make sure that we have a varied industry in our districts, and it can't just be here. We have to improve legislation to make this available across other districts. In fact, our Congress has even, voted to help diversify the energy production needs of European countries. So I think that it's time we start doing that here as well.
All right, so just to follow up, would
Mhm.
you, if elected, sign on to a Green New Deal aimed at cutting
Yeah.
carbon emissions by 2030?
Yes, absolutely.
We have one last question for you, and it kind of has to do with surrounding news about Russian interference in our involvement in Afghanistan. Today, we have soldiers enlisting into the military to fight in Afghanistan despite not even being alive during the terrorist attacks on 9/11. If elected, would you work to bring home our troops along with preventing future endless wars?
Yes, absolutely. And we also need to be improving our foreign policy. This administration has done pretty terribly with foreign policy in these areas, and we need to make sure that we are putting our American lives first. We need to make sure that we are putting our soldiers first, and that we are actually legislating and working for them instead of Russia. It's absolutely appalling to me that this is a situation that we're in right now, and that there are intel reports out there that are months old claiming that we knew about this.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we have for you today. Would you like to take a moment to address the audience directly?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on today. Thank you for listening. I am Natalie Cline. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives in West Virginia's first district. We are a rural district in West Virginia, and we desperately need people elected to public office who are going to have the best interests of our people at mind and care about our people. All three of our congressional representatives right now are in it to, help their corporate buddies and the bottom lines of CEOs. At least that's how their voting history looks. We need a break. We need somebody who's going to advocate for us. I know I will do that, and so will the other Democratic candidates on the ticket, which, by the way, we historically have an all-female Democratic ticket for federal office with Paula Jean Swearingen running for U.S. Senate, Kathy Kunkel running for U.S. Congress, and Hillary Turner also running for U.S. Congress. So this is pretty historical for West Virginia, and I'm very proud to be one of those four women. And something to keep in mind when you go to vote. In West Virginia, as a state, we lose 45 people every single day to other states. These are our children who are leaving to find better education, better employment, better quality of life. These are other people that are still working age who feel that they have no choice but to leave in order to put food on the table for their families. And I will work every single day to make sure that I am advocating for our health, our jobs, and for our kids. And that includes opportunities for our kids to stay close to home. It's time we get back to that community that we have always called West Virginia. Thank you. You can also find us online at natalieklineforcongress.com. We're also on Facebook at Natalie Cline for Congress and on Twitter at Natalie Cline WV. Thanks.
All right. That's all we have for you guys today. If you'd like to support Natalie's campaign, the links to her website, as well as their social media, will be down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.